Hi everyone, welcome to our module number 4 where we're going to be talking about existential therapy, and I've got a number of different resources for you as we move through this module. Luckily we're only focusing on one chapter, which I think is a welcome change from the past couple of weeks. You guys are doing a great job on the discussion boards. Keep it up. As a nice little reminder, this is the first week where you will be doing your role plays with your partners that I assigned you in that announcement, and we'll be reflecting on your experience both as the client and as the counselor within that role play for your first journal that will be due at the end of this module. If you have any questions about that, let me know. I was looking through the content on this module, and I really didn't want to spend a lot of time lecturing at you because I've got a number of good videos for you to review and watch, which are time consuming to review and watch the videos. What is nice about getting into these, the theoretical orientations that you will continue to read about throughout the rest of the semester. What's nice about these is that we're now talking about people that may actually still be alive, which is fantastic, because then you can get really up-to-date videos of the work that they're doing and how they do this work. Or we have like some older videos of folks, like the one that you're going to be watching with Viktor Frankl and the Rollo May related video as well. So in combination with those and the other video that you'll be watching through the library, just a lot of information. So I don't want to spend a ton of time talking with you about existential therapy and reiterating what everybody else is going to be telling you. What I do want to mention is that I've developed what I hope is useful for you. The questions that were asked in the discussion board last week, as I mentioned before, I ask you to reflect on these theories in a specific way for a reason, because you're going to need to kind of acquire this knowledge to be tested on probably later on in your life. But I thought that it might be useful for you guys to just have these, a standard kind of form worksheet, if you will, that can help you kind of take notes on each chapter as you're reading them, or on the supplemental materials and the videos that I have you watch for each module. So I did create a little bit of a worksheet. I'm going to continue to post it within each module on theoretical orientations, theoretical orientation worksheet. So within that, I've kind of outlined just some basic questions just to consider whenever you're going through each chapter and reading about the theory of the week. What is that specific theory? Who are the key people, the key players of that theory? What are the key concepts? Like there are the 6 different propositions within existential therapy. That would be kind of the key concepts of that theoretical orientation. Different techniques that go hand in hand with that theoretical orientation. With existential therapy, it's one of those unique ones because they don't have like a prescribed set of techniques that are being used, because the orientation basically asks therapists and counselors to say, there's not one particular right way to conduct a therapy session, and we're kind of operating from a mindset, a theoretical mindset with existential therapy, more than a set of like standardized worksheets and a standardized process that people would go through. So that could be different for each theoretical orientation. The role of the counselor, because I think that's really important that you reflect on the role of the counselor within each of these theoretical orientations, because you will eventually be that counselor. And so it's important to know, what is the role? Is it more of an expert? Is it more of a guide? Is it more of a sitting back and letting the client do the work because they can do the work? That could be an area where if you're reflecting on the role of the counselor, you're reflecting on things that a counselor might do that might be a little bit more uncomfortable for you. Like within that orientation, within that theory, is a counselor more likely to be a bit more confrontational? Or if so, what does that look like? Or a bit more direct versus passive, like person-centered, that we'll learn about next week. Within existential theory, you're asking a client to be really critical of how they view themselves and the world that they're living in, and how they view their purpose in life and their meaning in life and the choices that they make. And so the confrontation would be with an existential therapy, inaction, right? Even inaction is a choice. And as a result of making that choice to not act upon a certain aspect of one's life, there are natural consequences to that. And so within existential therapy, that therapist is going to be kind of going directly to the source of the consequences, which is the person who made the decision. That's our client, and saying, well, this was a choice that was made, and these are the consequences that happen. Let's reflect on that and how you might see that differently down the road if you're making a similar choice in another way. So, because the role of the counselor is so important, and I think that a lot of the connection that we have with our theoretical orientation comes from what is expected of the counselor within that theoretical orientation. I like solution-focused therapy, and that is my orientation because it's brief, and in that brevity there's not a lot of fluff. And so it does require a counselor to be very direct and honest with a client. And I like that. I like being able to do that with clients. And I feel comfortable doing that because that matches a little bit more of my personality than some of the other theoretical orientations. So if, person-centered would probably be on the opposite end of the spectrum for me personally, because it's a very hands-off approach, right? So you should be reflecting on the role of counselor in a way that makes you think of whether or not you want to be that counselor using that particular theory of the week. So hopefully that will help you with that part of that worksheet. What do you like best about this theory? How does it connect with the population you want to work with? Another really important thing to start thinking about. I know you guys all have ideas of where you want to work when you graduate. That day will come before you know it, which is fantastic. It's good that it'll be here before you know it, but a little bit anxiety provoking for some, I'm sure. But if you have a certain population that you want to be working with, you have to start thinking about how that theoretical orientation will work with that client population. And as we've already seen, and I've tried to provide some resources on that, a lot of these theoretical orientations have been adapted in certain ways to work with certain client populations, like the Adlerian play therapy, or like incorporating group therapy, or incorporating, if I can get the word out, incorporating Adlerian theory into a group counseling session, or existential therapy into a group counseling session. If you're interested in working with like couples, how do these theoretical orientations play into that? Is there an associated couples and family theory that goes along with it? So you have to start thinking about the population that you're going to be working with. And understanding your theoretical orientation. It's all got to fit. It's kind of like a puzzle. And right now you've got a big box of 1,000 pieces all scattered on your dining room table. And right now we're just kind of putting together the outside of the puzzle. I'm assuming that that's how everybody starts putting puzzles together. But right now you're just kind of connecting those the key pieces, that foundation for the puzzle. Before you know it, it'll be all complete. And that completion of that puzzle would be you working with a certain population, using a theoretical orientation, with, butterflies and flowers, and everything's perfect. So I want you to be pretty critical when you think about what you like least about this theory, and what other questions, what's outstanding questions you have about the theoretical orientation. And the reason for those two questions that I put on this worksheet is because regardless of what theoretical orientation you come to adopt, or a combination of a couple, you're not going to like everything about that theoretical orientation, or not likely. I mean, there are probably going to be a couple little things you're like, I'm not really sure about that. For me, it's the miracle question that comes with solution-focused theory. If you woke up tomorrow and a miracle had happened, how would your life be different? I just don't like that question. I understand the reasoning behind it, and I use and have used kind of a modification of it, if you will. I just personally don't like that particular question. So, and that's okay. We don't have to like every little minute piece of theoretical orientation. And so I want you to be a little bit critical of the theory, what's missing from it. This could be an area where, if you're wanting and hoping to work with diverse populations, with a certain population that is specific to like a category of disabilities, let's say substance use disorder or whatever it might be, you can be a little bit critical about how that that theory may not work 100% of the time with that client population. And what questions do you have? You should come out of reading each of these chapters with some questions, lingering questions that can be posed for me and your classmates, supervisors down the road. You should be left with some questions. That's kind of the research mindset that I have, that, as we learn and acquire new information, that we should be questioning things. We should be, continuing to expand our understanding of whatever new content it is that we're being exposed to. So again, hopefully you find that useful. I'm not going to be grading you on it. It's just really for your own study purposes. Hopefully it'll help you later on when you're thinking about your theoretical orientation, because when you get to the end of the semester and you're trying to think of like all 13 theories that we've talked about over the course of this semester, it can get a little daunting, and there can be a lot of overlap. As you can tell, there's a lot of overlap. Even if you I'm looking at my textbook over here on the side, but even looking at existential therapy and the kind of the key players, right? You notice that a lot of these theorists, a lot of these practitioners knew each other or studied under each other at one point or another, or were related to each other. And so, everything can get entwined a little bit. I will also say that within rereading this chapter, because I read these chapters, as a refresher before class every semester, but it really was a little bit more difficult for me to separate reading this chapter this go around from life, because so many things, I think, translated to our current social situation with the pandemic. And with an existential therapy, I think there are a lot of people out there, myself included, who at times over the past 7 months have felt alone, have felt, a heightened level of anxiety that has been outside of what existential theorists would say is normal anxiety, right? Or existential anxiety. I think there were a lot of places that I connected with because of my individual experience going through everything and just being that kind of in that isolated bubble, if you will. And so that to me, it was interesting because I like existential theory. I've never really connected with it in that way as much before I did this year. So, I think there are a lot of connections that can be made to a theory that's been around for a long time and came from the experiences of people that went through very traumatic, what we would categorize now as very traumatic events. Even looking at Yalom and his life and how he was the child of immigrants, and there's likely that generational trauma within his life, right? We learn about trauma, and well, you guys haven't taken the trauma class yet, but we learn about generational trauma and what that does. And within Viktor Frankl, the roots of existential theory were there before he was put into a concentration camp, but solidified by his experiences. And, there are other things about this theory that I really gravitate towards, that understanding that there are some times where we do kind of just live life without really reflecting on the meaning behind it. I used to travel a good amount for work, and, there were probably more days than I care to admit where I would get from my home to where I needed to be in that hour span. I couldn't tell you anything about it. I just was there, living and being. I wasn't attaching any meaning to that. And so it takes effort to put meaning into certain parts of our life that are easy to just kind of glide through. Within existential theory, I think one of the things it's kind of known for, in addition to meaning, purpose, right, is the understanding, the view of death. And death is not something to be feared, but it's, we're on this planet to live and die. Nobody's guaranteed tomorrow, that kind of mindset. And so I think if you guys are thinking about the client population that you're going to be working with, that could be one of those thoughts that comes up for a lot of people, whether they're dealing with, a pandemic, let's say, or if they are adjusting to a disability, or if they're entering into a recovery process. So awareness of of death, kind of the end of life stage, and what we're here to be doing, what we're here on this planet for, can be very cathartic for people to go through and really examine that. And I think that's the point of existential theory, is to really closely help our clients closely examine their life, right? And so, without having a concrete 12-stage, 4-stage, 18-phase process for doing that. And so for me, I think that was always the part that I thought I would find difficult with existential theory, is that there was no like finite end to it, right? So with that, I think I've babbled on enough about it. I hope you guys find the videos interesting, and the worksheet useful. I'll miss y'all in the discussion board this week and hearing about your thoughts around the topic of the week, but I look forward to reading your first journals, and I hope everybody has an enjoyable role play session and an enjoyable Labor Day weekend. All right, see y'all later.